Team Fortress 2 is famous, or infamously, known for having a surprisingly active and numerous fanbase in regards to the age of the game. From the outside looking in, the TF2 community is an anomalous contradiction. It is both close-knit and highly divided. It is both a refuge for the eldest in gaming, yet it attracts an influx of new fans to this day. It is both a bigoted, gate-kept fanbase and an open-minded, welcoming hugbox. Different fans will tell you different things from different perspectives, and poetically, everyone chooses sides. But in all this chaos buries a perspective that has long been forgotten about, that being just someone who likes the game, and that is what I want to explore. To many, TF2 is inseparable to the community that keeps it alive, or at least is believed to be keeping it alive. There exists a narrative that without the TF2 community, not just a fanbase or an audience, but a living and ever-present community with its own culture, there is no TF2. Personally, I disagree, as to me, the game is good enough to stand on its own, which is why in this video I want to look at Team Fortress 2 with the community removed. I want to look at the value of TF2, at what it has and what it lacks, as well as just things about the game in a modern lens without the usual justification or context. I don't just mean reasons players say in order to cope with TF2's shortcoming. I also mean the qualities people see as something that adds to it. For example, if you were to go to any video of someone playing TF2 for the first time, you will not only see people explaining things that are necessary about the game, but I can also guarantee that there would be a plethora of fans explaining deepest lore, community history, and justifications for the jank of the game. While not inherently a bad thing, I think it's interesting seeing this knee-jerk reaction towards anyone new to the game, almost as if there isn't any confidence in the game standing on its own, rather needing to be explained. But just like a joke, fully explaining it for someone to understand kinda ruins its potency. Don't get it twisted though. Ultimately, it's not a problem at all, and it's just excited people showing their love for the game. But that's what I want to go in depth with. Looking at TF2 on its own terms on what it has, a perspective long gone or arguably even discredited. So allow me to be a little bit philosophical and look at the game in this kind of perspective. So let's activate our firewall and block any traffic from YouTube, Reddit, and Twitter as we look at TF2, 18 years later, the community removed. Obviously, the first adjective that comes to mind is outdated. I don't just mean visually or mechanically. If we pop open the hood, we see a game specialized for hardware from an era long forgotten. The game is heavily optimized to be CPU bound and memory restricted, which is great for a time when graphics cards were overheating and crashing, attempting to render a single dynamic light. But in our modern times where graphics cards are seen as the powerhouse of a gaming rig and memory standards have grown from cache to RAM, TF2 fails to utilize hardware properly, making it struggle at times, even with modern hardware. Couple that with an API that was outdated even back then and the lack of proper multi-threaded optimization, even with an update to a 64-bit executable, TF2 is a poorly scalable game. But to most, that isn't even a problem. 1080p 60 is no great feat at all with any hardware made in the past 10 years, but humans are weird. And TF2 not utilizing hardware can be a bad thing for some, and more often than not, I've heard it be said by people that I've tried getting into the game, but preferred not to, saying that it's too old. The game looks old, feels old, and runs old. But before you dismiss their opinions for not seeing the true quality of the game, let me be devil's advocate. In a time where hardware is hitting near 3-digit teraflops, it's amazing to think what modern hardware could be capable of producing. Detailed open worlds with no render distance, experiences that can simulate thousands of entities without breaking a sweat, a game with details that are not needed to be sacrificed or beyond. It feels good when hardware is used to its absolute limit with things that justify doing so. It's the idea of bang for your buck, which, in case anyone forgot, we did have to buy our hardware at the end of the day. We need to justify our own purchases lest we get the shameful buyer's remorse. Overwatch, Monster Hunter, or even Minecraft with shaders, to name a few, achieve the accolade of utilizing hardware to its fullest extent. Be it with high frame rates to quality ratio of Overwatch, the scale of Monster Hunter Wilds, or the beautification of Minecraft. Then you have Team Fortress 2, where its engine starts panicking if a map maker forgot to call a room that's less than 50 meters away, included one too many prompts, or even, God forbid, included a dynamic prop. Of course, I'm exaggerating for comedy's sake, but these issues are still there in one form or another. Though in this case it isn't so much about what stops someone from playing TF2, but rather what incentivizes someone to play something else. I can see this conflict resolved if TF2 were to be updated with consideration to modern hardware, but as it stands now, Valve has no interest in doing so. Thankfully, TF2's visual art style is still enough to bring people in, as it's a masterclass of its trade and has carried TF2 into the realm of timelessness. So while it's not the most visually impressive game, it's still something that's nice to look at, and for many, that's enough. Speaking of visuals, if there's one thing TF2 has that the majority of the gaming market doesn't have, is a visual style that defies expectations in a positive way. Ironically, the fact that TF2 isn't cutting edge can be seen as a blessing. Even with all its additions to TF2 over the years, the game champions a clean and easy on the eyes presentation that becomes even more impressive given the fact that the game is meant to be played with 24 other players in a single server, firing constant projectiles at each other. Same cannot be said with other games that bombard a player with so many visual effects that it would seem preferable to wear sunglasses while gaming. The game proves that a world can be visually pleasing yet technically unimpressive, which in turn makes it even more impressive. It's impressive that the game's world is made up of mostly heavily detailed cubes and player models that had fewer triangles than the average AAA box. Wish it utilized hardware to greatly add to the game's experience, but I digress. But what good are visuals without solid gameplay? Which is what TF2 handles best. TF2, without a shadow of a doubt, is a fun game. Its gameplay can be appealing to some and repulsive to others, but for those who prefer the style of gameplay TF2 delivers, it's an unrivaled experience with the execution of mechanics. People can have issues with parts of the gameplay, and a player can wish for things to be a little bit different, but there's a reason why the game can have so many with thousands of hours, even with the flaws. An in-depth analysis of gameplay is beyond the scope of this video, and many others have done that topic justice many times before, so I won't cover it here. But to sum it up, it's a really fun game. How the gameplay is delivered is the true point of contention, however. TF2 is much like every other modern multiplayer game, featuring a matchmaker and party system. With a few couple clicks, the matchmaker finds a match and one can start playing the game when it's done. Yet, remember how we established before that the game plays old? Well, unlike other multiplayer games, TF2 wasn't made with those modern practices of how a multiplayer game functions. While there is a beginning and end of a match, there really isn't a beginning or end of a play session. TF2 doesn't make any real distinction of what really is a beginning or an end. It's just when you start or stop playing. You can play thousands of matches of TF2, but your win-loss doesn't tangibly matter. There is no obvious score of that. You can leave in the middle of a match with no consequence, and even though there is an XP penalty, XP is purely cosmetic and worthless as hours played deliver the same metric. Likewise, playing until the end isn't incentivized beyond the personal satisfaction of doing so. This contrasts heavily with other multiplayer games that give tangible rewards to players on completing matches and sets a hard line beginning and end to a match, punishing leavers and rewarding stayers. Depending on who you ask, this is either a blessing or a curse. Those that prefer this enjoy the freedom and laid-back attitude that gives the game, while others dislike that it makes the game feel less impactful and lower the quality of matches. Both of these perspectives are genuinely valid, and if anything just shows that there's an underlying issue with TF2, and that's its identity crisis. TF2 is a game of its time that had been forcefully modernized to capitalize on shifting times. It's no secret that Valve wanted TF2 to become its next big esport and failed the experiment to do so. That is why the wrapper of TF2 is so janky and feels ill-fit for the game it is. Anyone who migrates from other games to TF2 can feel this oddness through the conflicting presentation and gameplay. Presentation says that this game is a competitive team-based shooter. Gameplay, however, says that this game is laid-back and casual. Ultimately, I believe that this identity crisis hurts the game in its impression to the unfamiliar and grants a highly contradictory narrative. TF2 is a hero shooter that doesn't deliver what is expected of a hero shooter. TF2 is a competitive game that doesn't reward someone at all for playing the game as such. TF2 is a live service game that is not serviced, or at least anywhere near the same level expected of one. In the state that TF2 is right now, at this very moment, it's a conundrum. A conundrum that makes it very clear why the game hasn't really grown for a decade, even with its critical success. It's an excellent game, but by the way I see it, it's a game from a different time wearing the skin of a modern one. And much like if it were a person, it's really unappealing to both modern and its own generation. Had it been treated like the game it was supposed to be, I think that things would definitely be different, if not better. That is how I see TF2 without the influential opinions of the community. TF2 is an old game that's past its prime, yet holds so much value in its golden standard of gameplay and design. It's still a game that rivals modern titles, but suffers from the heavy-handed approach Valve went with when trying to mimic others in its industry. Personally, I would like the game to be returned to its roots, as that is where every piece fit together perfectly to deliver the game TF2 was meant to be. And on a final note, if you're wondering why I didn't touch a topic you thought I should have covered, it's probably because A, in the grand scheme of things, it isn't that consequential. B, it's something not readily apparent as part of TF2, like mods or customizability. Or C, it's something that can be seen everywhere else, like microtransactions. But still, feel free to tell me in the comments section below. And if you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you guys later.